Ready when you are, Brian. And here we are.
And here we are. Hello, everyone.
Yes. Hello, Miss T, Son Honey, Gerald, Hector, Rick. Good to see ya. Stephanie Berry. Let's see who else we got here. Casey, good to see you. I see they've been handing out treats. How you doing, Harley Dad? Mr. Green Thumb, good to see you. Latina, good to see you too. See, she found it. How you doing, Kevin? Big D, I hope you're still in here. Canada, you need to know. Good to see you in the chat.
Yeah. It was in there earlier.
Oh, so anyways, folks, tonight we're going to talk about a so-called treaty with the WHO in our countries and the misconceptions that a lot of us had about it. How you doing, Coda? We all thought this was a treaty they're going to sign on to. Well, that's not necessarily true. We've been already signed on to this treaty since 1948. What they're doing now is they're amending it to take it from a, shall we say, voluntary type basis to a mandatory basis, meaning that the WHO will have basically entire control of our healthcare system and many other things that most people don't realize. And what me and Brian have figured out is that this is how they're going to usher in all these things we've been talking about, from digital vaccine passports to digital passports to 15-minute cities to any number of things that we've talked about.
CBDCs.
CBDCs, oh yeah, for sure. Digital currency, all that stuff. It all is a basis off this about giving power to third-party organizations that aren't elected by any of us. Right,
I guess we can sort of give a quick rundown of how the WHO actually works. So there's a part of the WHO that probably most people haven't ever heard of, and that's the World Health Assembly, which are made up of what they call state parties. So each country that has signed on to the WHO agreement have representatives from that country called state parties. They are the ones that well, you can't even say vote because it's not a vote. They're the ones that will recommend, or in this case, they're recommending these amendments to the International Health Treaty. So just the way that works. So a country will present an amendment. It'll be put into the pile of amendments. Now, there isn't a vote on the amendments. How it works is that if you don't write in or disagree with the amendment, it is passed, and anything that is passed becomes a WHO law. So it's basically the amendments are put put into the bill or into the treaty, and if you don't say anything, it's passed, and then you're obligated to follow the treaty. It's kind of like your cable provider. They've done that over the past. Probably everybody's experienced that, where the cable provider gives you the whole package, but if you don't call in and say you don't want it, you're going to be paying for it for the next month or until you cancel it. But in this case, once it's in, you can't cancel it. And we do actually have the documents stating that, and that might be a good time to bring up that document.
Yeah, go ahead and bring it right on up.
Oops.
Yep. Oops.
No, that's not the. That's sorry. It's this document.
Can you blow that up a little bit, Brian?
I don't know if I can, to be honest.
All right. Oh, let me see.
It's starting at Article 59.
I can get it.
Yeah.
So at the current state, Article 59, and don't mind me, I can't read the chat at the moment. The period provided in execution of Article 22 of this, does that say Constitution of the WHO, for rejections of or reservations to these regulations or amendments therein shall be 18 months from the date of notification by the Director General of the adoption of these regulations or of an amendment to those regulations by the Health Assembly. Any rejection or reservations received by the Director General after the expiry of the period shall have no effect. Okay, so essentially what that means is like Brian was saying, it's strictly an opt-out type thing. And how you doing, Fry? Good to see you. Rob, good to see you. Anybody I've missed? Stephanie, good to see you. So basically what that means is any of our countries, if our representatives supposedly of this don't open their mouths and say things, it automatically becomes law within 18 months. Now here's the rub. The amendments that have been made to this or posed to this were put in 12 months ago. Nobody's told us this. So in 6 more months, instead of having a treaty where it is voluntary, whether countries take the recommendations of the World Health Organization, it will state that they have to. Yes, he does, Angel Messenger. There is a thing on this on Dr. John Campbell's channel. And yes, a good one to watch. So essentially, it goes much deeper than that, though, because it allows them under the auspices of a health emergency or any other thing to tell any country that they can implement a digital vaccine passport. And of course, if you want to travel around, they have to issue a digital ID. And that's not malarkey. That's right out of their own mouths. That's their intentions.
We've seen that happen in Canada.
You already are seeing it happen in Canada and many other.
Yeah, well, we've actually seen it with the introduction of a digital as a QR code for validation of vaccines. the travel restrictions, although they were temporary, it certainly leads to that when they want to start putting in these a true digital ID and CBDCs in 15-minute cities. All it'll take is the WHO declaring a pandemic, and we will next time we will see all this put in, taken further. It won't be just a health, won't be just a vaccine passport. It'll be a full-on digital ID.
Yeah. FJT says, "Nah, U.S. just opened." What you don't understand, FJT, is what they were doing now isn't the same thing that they're going to do in the future. In the future, it won't be voluntary. That's the difference. And that's right now. I believe we're at the 6-month mark to where if none of our countries basically say, no, we're not doing this, it'll become automatic.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of signing a treaty because the treaty's already been signed over 70 years ago. So what they're doing now is just making amendments to it, of which there's like 300. Anything from redefining words to changing it from voluntary to mandatory.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to go through some of the amendments.
I don't have them right here in front of me at the moment.
I do have them lined up to go. But that's just the second part of the Article 59. Yeah, because I mean, we've seen this happen, and it started with the WHO. And
yeah, just a second, I can hunt it down for you, Stephanie. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen the COVID was just a test pandemic, and it was a test to see how far we could go. And what started it all was from the WHO, and they are now giving themselves more power to force state parties, as they call it, countries, to follow rules that they are things like may or suggest from suggesting these policies to having to telling them they must implement these policies. It's there's two documents that are in the description. One's the international international, what's it called? Oh God. The international health regulation, which is the treaty, and then there's the amendments to the international health regulations. And
yeah, I don't think you need to still have that up, Brian.
Yeah,
no problem there, Stephanie. That's really
links
crazy.
to those documents are. The links
Yes,
are in the description. Go have a look. Read through them where they're taking out from, may and shall and
all kinds of stuff.
all kinds of that stuff. And the
I
thing
know.
about it, you'll if we don't get out and let our representatives know, we're going to end up in that position.
Yeah. I don't know if it's you or not.
Silence is.
I don't know if it's you or me, Brian, but you're kind of cutting in and out. Is it?
Oh,
Yeah, is Brian cutting in and out?
it's probably me.
Oh, he's very much waking up, Timber. He's done a complete 180 on this stuff. Basically, what it boils down to is they're using this as a backdoor to get into, push through all these things that have been talked about, that have been speculation, or to keep us focused on chasing our tails. But this is how they're going to do it, is through this treaty. Because basically what's going on is you've got unelected bureaucrats from other countries, through the UN, through the WHO, through the WF and all that stuff. They're all tied in together. They're working lockstep with this stuff, including the leaders of our countries, be it Trudeau or Biden or anything. And a big telling thing that definitely puts us home is all countries are signed on to this. You would think that if we're at odds with Russia and China and all that stuff, that they'd be going, oh, no way, we're not getting up. We're not going to be a part of this. Oh, no. They are all with it lockstep. So much for enemies, huh? They are definitely all in agreement on this. And that's how they're going to do it. The first thing they're going to do is it'll be something innocuous. And I'll tell you right now, I would not be surprised one bit in the least that if we don't see some kind of global problem prior to November of next year. I think everybody can figure out why I say that. I don't know if people have been following what's been going on and the things that are coming out about not just COVID, but the jib jabs and the when and who knew what and how and all that stuff. But it's becoming readily more and more apparent that that it's even more than even we thought. And if they're going to partner up with every country on the planet, even ones that we're supposedly at odds with, that really tells you that everything else that they're doing is kabuki theater. So keep that in mind whenever you hear them talking about a war or an economic problem or this with whatever country they want to pick of the day. Because when it comes down to it, push comes to shove, they all are on board with this. They want to be able to dictate where you can go, when you can go, how you can do it, what you can eat, where you can spend your money, where you can live. And I wouldn't be a bit shocked to tell you who you can love and who you can't. Tell you how you can believe and how you think. And that's all going to be derived out of this. That's how they're going to do it.
You can you can just look at the past 3 years, and it certainly lines up to look that way, because over the past 3 years we haven't really seen anything come out of the WEF or CBDCs. They did this. They did the pandemic. They tested out digital COVID passports. Then all of a sudden, you hear all about 15-minute cities. Then you start hearing about CBDCs and digital IDs. It's I don't think this is coincidental.
Yeah, hard place. You're right. Social credit score. That is definitely something they want to get in.
Yeah. They've been doing a test of that in China over the last couple of years, and it's going to be instituted right across China in 2024.
Well, they're testing Oxford that they were doing there in the UK.
Yeah.
I guess at this moment ain't working out so good for them because a lot of people are protesting, but they're still trying to ram it through.
Yeah.
And they're going to try it in Canada. And guess one of the cities that they're going to try it in Canada? Vancouver.
Well, Vancouver has signed on to the 15-minute city agenda. It's that's documented. Edmonton's another one. I believe Toronto is another one.
Yeah,
that's easy enough to find.
Miss T, yeah, me and Brian saw that quite a while ago. We're the ones that have been spreading it all over the internet, much to the chagrin of the powers that be that like to ban the shit out of me at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, if that's what you're talking about, Miss T, yep, me and Brian are well aware of that, and we've been spreading it as far and wide as we possibly can. It's just getting people to take the time to watch it and understand it. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna here, Brian. Hold on a second. I'm gonna bring this up.
Yeah.
Give me a second. All right, give me 1 second. I don't know if people have heard this or not, but this is the latest on a Cleveland study about the vax.
Earlier this week, we discussed the peer-reviewed study published by the Cleveland Clinic that raised some questions about the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, specifically whether they made you more likely to actually get COVID the more jabbed you had been.
The study first published as a preprint, but the latest peer-reviewed study released in April finds the risk of COVID-19 also varied by the number of COVID-19 doses, vaccine doses previously received. The higher the number of vaccines previously received, the higher the risk of contracting COVID-19.
Okay, did everybody hear that? That's what that study is showing. According to that study, not me, not Brian, supposedly, allegedly, that the more that you've gotten, the higher your risk of actually contracting COVID.
Here to delve into the details of the study is Jacob Rich, a researcher at the Cleveland Clinic Learner Research Institute and a policy analyst at the Reason Foundation. Welcome, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.
So help us understand from a more scientific point of view what the study does not.
Well, the study specifically speaks to the XBB lineage, one of the most recent lineage within the study. And it really only speaks to two things. It only speaks to what happened among Cleveland Clinic employees who were the sample population in the study, and basically how various types of vaccines affect the probability of catching COVID. It doesn't discuss the probability of mortality, and it doesn't discuss the probability of hospitalization, only on whether people tested positive, and there's a lot of bias that can happen to that for all sorts of reasons.
Right. So there was some conversation, and actually I think the preprint actually even addressed it, saying that, well, you might think people who got jabbed more often, if it also shows that they're more likely to get COVID, it's because people at a higher risk of catching COVID are the ones more likely to get jabbed a bunch of times because they're an elderly population. But then the preprint says, but actually this population was not an elderly population. You're saying it's actually population at Cleveland Clinic. So how does that further complicate? I mean, I guess it could be the case that people working in a health setting are more likely to contract COVID because they're going to come into contact with it more. Does that check? Do you see where I'm going with that?
Exactly. So that's what we call selection bias. So if we were looking at the general population, we would expect people who were immunocompromised, maybe older, people who are more susceptible to catching COVID-19 to be more likely to be vaccinated. That is less of an issue in this analysis because the average age is about 42 years old, right in the early 40s. So this is actually a relatively young age group that we're looking at. But the types of Cleveland Clinic employees they greatly differ. Like if you think about me, I don't see patients. I'm a researcher. I just do math all day. So the probability that I am exposed to COVID-19 is incredibly low. And someone like me might be less likely to get vaccinated than a doctor or someone who actually works in infectious diseases. So there are issues that still shouldn't as a young group.
That people in higher situations at the Cleveland Clinic or more likely to want to protect themselves by getting more follow-up doses. That between the likelihood of contracting COVID. Okay, so earlier you mentioned that this study is measuring the likelihood of contracting COVID, but not the risk, any relationship between the vaccines and hospitalization or death. Can you unpack why that's an important distinction to make?
Because if you think about young people, at least half of COVID-19 incidents are asymptomatic, and the vast majority do not show up. There's a lot of noise whether someone gets tested in the first place. And death is much more sure. And there were some major issues with the death data, especially earlier during the pandemic when the federal government gave incentives for hospitals to treat COVID. But yes, I mean, like testing is probably the least accurate way of looking at things, but it is incredibly interesting that the relationship isn't noisy. It is like 0 at the lowest, 1 a little bit higher, then 2, 3, and then more than 3. And it's a very predictive relationship. I feel like something's happening there. It's just very hard to disentangle.
So,
okay. Yes, I'll drop this link, Timber, and anybody else that wants it. Now, I want to point out, Timber, or anybody else, this isn't the only study that has come out and said this. Okay, this isn't the only one. This just happens to be the latest one, and the link I just posted is to this video. Okay, 1 second.
Obviously, people are looking at this study and saying, this vindicates. This would vindicate an approach of thinking that vaccine is still very important for high-risk individuals, elderly individuals, for which there's been some good evidence otherwise that the vaccines are helping with severe disease and death if you fall into a particular category. But this study, this preprint, might be giving pause to people who are like, well, is it so important for otherwise healthy and younger people to get vaccinated over and over again, or to require it of that group? Frankly, the only real vaccine mandate that still exists that I can find in the U.S. is actually on college students at certain campuses. What is your impression of the kind of policy implications of what we're seeing here?
I think the policy implications are most appropriate for the bivalence, because there are actually two parts of this, right? We were looking at the number of vaccines people received, regardless of vaccine type, and their probability of contracting COVID. But then we were also comparing the previous vaccines to the new vaccines. And the new vaccines did not go through much FDA approval. They were not tested on a general population. It was just assumed that they were going to work. And the study shows that they basically just don't work on one of the most recent forms of COVID.
Everybody catch that? I hope everybody caught what he just said.
Yep.
I think that's actually the most major policy implication. The idea that the FDA can arbitrarily choose which types of vaccines go out and not determine whether they're effective. And I don't understand why anyone would actually force someone to get a vaccine that wasn't shown to be effective. And I don't completely understand the arbitrary criteria of choosing which types of pharmaceuticals don't need to go through the entire FDA approval process, especially with a technology as new as mRNA.
That in case
I don't know what happened there. You still with us, Robert?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So is that video over?
Nope.
Oh.
No,
It
must have got kicked. Let me
Yeah.
I'll continue.
that you might think it is kind of appropriate from a public health perspective to still require college camps to the hospitalization among your PDK?
Now, what she tried to argue for was that if it was tested properly and if it was shown to be effective and if it did this and if it did that, should it still be required, which is totally irrelevant to what this paper talks about. It doesn't matter whether you can if anything in your life. I can say if I won the lottery, I'd be a rich man. Well, that doesn't make it true. Just so everybody understands what she's trying to do here.
Before the pandemic, if you would have asked me that question, I would have said there is like a theoretical world where vaccine mandates do make sense. But after seeing the government's response to all of this and just thinking about how people react to incentives, if a vaccine works and something is very dangerous, people are going to get vaccinated. I really think there is a personal motivation to do that. And during Alpha, the vaccine did show that there was major reductions in the incidence of disease and possibly deaths associated with the disease. But if you look at the mortality rate among young people, it was incredibly low. And if you look at the incidence or basically the prevalence of disease and whether young people would catch the disease, over half of the time, they didn't even show symptoms. And how likely you are to spread it to others is actually very dependent on your symptoms. If you're just breathing normally, you're not throwing mucus and all of this moisture into the air for other people to catch it. And maybe there's a slight probability that people would catch it from you still. It's really the symptomatic cases that are going to be the most likely to cause contraction. So I really don't think any sort of mandate is necessary. And then it actually puts the burden of proving that vaccines are effective back on the companies who actually have an incentive to make money from something that works, right?
Jacob, thanks.
That part right there.
Vaccines are effective on the companies who have.
So there you have it in a nutshell. Prove that your shit works. Yeah, you're correct, Mrs. T. She doesn't want it to be true. And you can see it makes it uncomfortable because this particular reporter's been banning about it since the beginning, since I've been watching it. Yeah, it's like a could have, would have, should have. Yeah, if I would have, should have, could have won the lottery, I'd be a rich man. Doesn't make it true. And she wants to poo-poo all over what ifs. And I'm glad he said what he did at the end. It's time for these companies to prove that their shit works. But see, this is what's going to happen. If this comes through with the WHO, it could be something as a simple common flu that they all of a sudden decide is the next deadliest thing that's going to be the scourge of mankind, kind of like they did with the swine flu.
Yeah, and in the amendments it says it can be declared with a possible threat of a pandemic. Not that if there is a pandemic, if the WHO considers it might become a pandemic, they can issue an emergency order.
And that's the thing. It doesn't have to be specifically, a worldwide thing. It can be a could be, or this could turn into. I don't remember, people remember years back when the big Ebola scare, they claimed Ebola was going to go across the world. Well, no, it's not, because Ebola isn't that infectious. Is it deadly? Oh, absolutely. Ebola is deadly as hell. But it's very hard to spread it. You have to be literally in contact with the bodily fluids of people who have it.
Yeah.
And you're right, Rick. When the government starts offering free beer, donuts, and in this case, college degrees and money and all kinds of stuff, that should be your first clue that something is wrong.
Yeah.
All right, Hector, you have a good one, guy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aussie. And just so you know, we're not saying this from a standpoint of being anti-science or anti-medication or anti-vax or anything like that. It's not the point. I'm anti-bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I can't even count how many hours I've read the science over the past 3 years, and it just didn't tell me that what they said was going on, and that's why I'm here. I'm just going to share this screen. So the WHO is giving themselves more power to take over the control of take control over countries on how they react in a pandemic situation, giving themselves the right to call a pandemic even though there isn't a pandemic. And no, we're just gonna look at this this little chart here. This is the funding, the top was it 15 contributors to the WHO. United States. Just gonna scroll down here a little bit so that you can. So basically, dark blue and light blue. Dark blue is assets contributed voluntary, and then the light blue is voluntary contributions. America, the top donator to the WHO. Second largest donator to the WHO is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a private citizen. You go down here, the National Philanthropic
Trust,
right? Rotary International.
So basically what it boils down to is, outside of some governmental funding of this stuff, it's funded by private people and private foundations of billionaires. Not the 1% like everybody banters about, billionaires. And as I said, it behooves you, everybody, I don't care if they listen or not, get a hold of your representatives, your MPs, or whatever you have in your countries, your senators. It doesn't matter. Shake their trees until they listen, because if we don't win this, it's game over. If they say, hey, you got to lock everybody down, they've got to lock everybody down, enforceable by law. And we've seen what they did in New Zealand and in Australia. It was absolutely sickening. And everybody thinks, well, you also seen what they did in Canada when everybody says, well, the police will never do that to the people. Oh, yes, they will. If they think they're going to save their job or do whatever, they most certainly would do anything they're told to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-police either. But in the same token, I'm not anti-dumb. I'm not dumb either. How you doing, Chaplain? Good to see you. So a word of caution to think it can't happen. It's already been proven that it can.
Yeah.
In many different places, in more ways than one.
Yeah. It all. When I look at it, looking back now, how many rights that were taken away through the pandemic, what they did, and with the institution of not traveling, locking down countries, locking down, in some cases, cities. I believe in Australia, you weren't allowed to go from city to city at one point. I know
they weren't even allowed at some places to leave more than 2 kilometers from their house.
Yeah. Here in BC, it was recommended that we don't travel outside our healthcare district. Anybody going into the Maritimes through the pandemic had to actually get written permission from the province that they were going to, whether by land, air, or sea. So these are things that they were able to institute, all because of the WHO declared a pandemic, and the government didn't care about our rights. And
you know what I find really hilarious about that, Brian? Well, disturbing as well, is when Trudeau backpedaled and said, well, mandates were only suggestions.
Yeah.
Oh, tell that to people that lost their jobs and their livelihoods and no longer have good relations with their families over it.
Yeah.
For the average person, Gerald, practically is rattle the cages of your politicians. Don't give them a moment's rest, and don't believe they're baloney. And yes, it is effective. It works.
Yeah.
It
So
does work.
I'm glad Gerald asked that question. So on the screen now, let me just let's see how it looks on. I'm just going to scroll up a little bit here. So for Canada, so our representative for the World Health Assembly, who make the policies for the WHO, our representative is Nicolas Palanque, or however you pronounce it. He's the executive director. In the description is his telephone number and his email address. I suggest every Canadian phone or email this person and have them object to the amendments of the pandemic treaty. Zoe Kahn is the chief negotiator, pandemic treaty. His is there. United States was a little more difficult.
Yeah, quite a bit more difficult.
So the first, the HSS Leadership, that link will bring you to the people who are we're believing that is involved with the WHO. Although on the WHO or the actually World Health Assembly website, the U.S. doesn't list a representative, which is a bit concerning. I would be a bit concerned about that as a U.S. citizen. But Xavier Becerra is the secretary and deputy secretary of the division of the HHS. I found his phone number. The only email I could find was comments@whitehousegovernment.com. But this guy does have a Twitter account, so you could probably reach him through there. But there is a phone number there. People really need, and I can't express this enough, is to get a hold of these people and place your objections to what's going on with the World Health Organization. That's what we can do as a single person. You can find that in the description of the video. And I can tell you that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because there was a nonpartisan issue that just happened up here in Canada. July 1st is our Canada Day. Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver had basically, they cut way back, and no, they were both all three cities had said, no, we're not doing fireworks this year. Well, people from both sides of the aisle made phone calls, wrote emails to the cities. Now Toronto has instituted their fireworks. Calgary has reinstated their fireworks. Vancouver, we're still working on it. So it will make a difference if enough people call. Take action.
And talk to people. I changed another person's mind today. Somebody who didn't know anything about this and believed everything that was on the news and all that stuff. And now they got me sending them all the information that I can on this stuff, because they didn't know. You know, there's a lot of people who are open to hear what's going on if you approach them in the right way.
Well, you can't approach people with, the death shot or depopulation, that sort of thing, because as soon as you come out with that, you're putting up a wall and the conversation is over. You really got to break it to them gently with facts. Everybody has a phone. If you carry the information around with you on the phone, you can show them. There's plenty of numbers out there that prove what they have done was basically government overreach. And and like I say, I can't say this number. Looking back, when I look back, and there's a pandemic, and then all the controls that were brought in, just one big test, and as the narrative is starting to fall apart, and with the U.S. election coming up in November of next year, I can pretty much guarantee, if we don't do anything now, there is going to be another pandemic before the election in 2024.
I won't go as far as to say that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Gerald, I guess the next step is to convince other people to do the same thing.
The biggest thing is we need to rule the cages of our politicians, whether we think they're going to listen or not. But we also got to talk to people in the community and get them engaged, get them to understand that just like this WHO amendments to this treaty, if you don't say no, you're automatically opted in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
silence is consent.
Yeah, and silence in this case is not golden. Yep, exactly, hard place. You're correct. But they can't do one without the other. That's the thing. We stop this, we stop a lot of everything else. It makes it a lot harder for them to be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah. Because if this treaty goes through, it makes all the other stuff, digital IDs, CBDCs, the climate change agenda, it makes it 1,000 times easier to institute the rest of those.
Yeah, let's see. Digital ID, social credit score, central bank digital currencies, climate lockdowns, CO2 credits, energy rationing, mRNA in our food chains, AI, and 15-minute cities. That brings about all that stuff. It paves the way. I don't know, Gerald. I can't say that there is or isn't, but I do believe that they'll try to make something out to scare the shit out of people to think the next Black Death is coming. I mean, we all know that COVID should not have been handled the way it was. Was COVID bad? Yes, it was. Was it what they made it out to be? Not even close.
Do you all believe another wave of virus coming then? Well,
it's hard to tell.
Let's look at monkeypox.
Yeah, there you go. Good example.
Right. There was a. It's not necessarily that it's coming, but they're going to spread fear that it's coming. They tried that 2 weeks ago with a new strain of COVID out of China.
Yeah,
it was in the news cycle for a few days. Nobody was buying it, and it disappeared. It's what people are willing to believe nowadays that keeps the fear going.
I know, Stephanie. I'm faced with the same thing, even in my close family. But I'm still not going to stop talking to other people. We're not going to crack every nut.
Yeah.
But the ones we can are one more person with their eyeballs open finally. Yes, Cindy, you're right. You're very right. This was a trial run to see what the reaction would be, see how people would do. And believe it or not, I don't think they got the reaction they wanted. I really think they thought that they were going to push through the vaccine passports and a digital ID system because of this, and it failed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're going to stop. They definitely are not going to stop.
Yeah.
This treaty was signed in 1948. They've been a long time working on this. Just like coronavirus was first discovered and disseminated in 1965. And they claim, well, warp speed. Yeah, warp speed, my ass.
Yeah. Yeah. So the things we can do is keep pushing, keep talking to people about the WHO documents. You can those two documents that are in the description can easily be put on your phone. Article 59 in the International Health Authority health regulations. Have them read that paragraph. It'll show it says right there, this is an opt-out situation. Silence is consent. And then the amendments go read the amendments, familiarize yourself with a few of them where it actually shows that we're taking it from may to must, basically.
Yeah.
Those are two documents. Everybody has a PDF reader. If you keep those two documents on your phone, they're easy to bring up. It's easy to explain to people what's going on with this. I keep them on my phone. I keep a whole bunch of other stuff on my phone. I keep stuff local to BC. I have the numbers from the government in Canada showing all the information, all from government websites. Can easily link them to the government websites, showing that the numbers that they are producing do not fit the narrative. And that alone has woken up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And I'm just one guy.
Yeah, and just remember, it only takes one to lead to 10, because everyone's going to talk to another one and to another one and to another one. But we literally are in a fight to keep our country.
Yeah, this isn't a Canadian thing. This isn't a U.S. thing. This is a world thing.
Yeah, that's their goal. And I need to explain to some people, the Great Reset and the so-called New World Order is a misnomer. It's one world order where they control everything. A very small group of unelected people. And this is how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe not specifically this, but this is the framework they're going to use.
Yeah.
And to attest to what you're saying, Stephanie, you need to realize, here's an example. Only 12% of the people are estimated in Canada to have gotten boosters. Only 16% in the United States. That tells me that there's an awful lot of people out there questioning stuff. You just got to get the right information under their nose at the right time.
Yeah. But if the Canadian government would come in and do just the same thing they did, not anything worse, those same people, there'd be a lot of the same people, because they're doing it because they don't have to. They're not doing it because they're actually woke yet or awake. But if you took away the bar privileges for the ages 19 to 40, that number would jump up again for boosters. There's no doubt in my mind. Now is the time that people need to be woken up.
They need to realize that you may need to sacrifice a little bit. Just because I don't get to get on a plane or I don't get to go to the bar or something, that should never have been an excuse to go against your better judgment.
Yeah. No, it's not just going to go away.
No, it's not.
We have
it's not going to go away until we get rid of these organizations completely and make damn sure that they never happen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm.
And don't get me wrong. Maybe these people are genuine. Maybe some of them are. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And in this case, we are definitely on a road to hell.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll throw the link into Dr. John Campbell's YouTube for where they're talking about this. I'll throw that in the description as well.
Yeah, people, please understand that even with the ICS and what we got from there, we understand the what's. Just like that Cleveland Clinic study, we understand the what's. You know, did you ever think there would be a day when you'd have a PhD researcher coming onto a, well, somewhat national news organization, being The Hill, and saying that our government should make sure that a pharmaceutical company proves efficacy and safety of a product that they're going to give the people? Did you ever think you'd see a day like this? You know, we spent many years in our mind thinking that, you know, hey, it's not that bad, or that's no, it can't be that way. Well, some people did. Actually, many people in this chat probably did, because there's a lot of people in this chat who do question authority. You know, just because you're in that position doesn't mean you're right. Yeah, Timber, and believe it or not, you can do a lot locally. Just talking to people is the biggest thing. You know, we can't expect that people are going to come to us. We need to go to them. Yeah, hard place. Yeah, that's quite funny, but quite true. Pinky in the Brain was a documentary. Yeah, no doubt. Oh man, that's an old one. God, I'm dating myself now. You know, and that's a good point, Andy. And it's sad that we've come to that. You never thought you'd see a day when virtually no one trusts the medical profession. That's crazy.
So the link to the Dr. John Campbell talking about this exact topic is now in the description of the video. Yeah, we all need to up our game on this one.
Yeah, definitely. Politicians do a lot of talk. We need to see some action. And they need to understand that we are not going to accept this at all. I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've done our hour. All I can suggest is go to the description, get the links to your country that's in there, do some writing, and spread this information. Or in 6 months' time, in 7 months' time, we might not be able to spread the information.
Absolutely. Some of their amendments is definitely control over information, misinformation, and disinformation. That's in their amendments. There really isn't, Gerald. The only thing I can say is just talk to people. We all can only do what we can do. There's no doubt about that. There isn't going to be any one person that's going to be the savior to us all.
Yeah. Yeah, and Fry's right. Fear equals control.
Yep, absolutely.
And
so the only thing we can do is what we can. No matter as much as little as we may seem, it may seem insignificant. It's just like a bucket of water. Every drop helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I suggest everybody go grab those two, the amendments and the international health regulations. Have them handy.
Yep, for sure.
Right now, this is the most important issue that we're dealing with right now. And if we don't get this stopped, the rest of it's going to be a piece of cake for them to institute.
For sure. And then I note everybody, thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
I hope you learned a little bit. And I do appreciate everybody here. It makes the hours I spend reading stuff worth it.
Yeah.
Because me and Brian actually were going to do something a little different prior to finding out about this whole treaty thing. Because even we weren't aware that this was going on. So they'll use all kinds of trickery to try and get us.
Yeah.
So I thank everybody here, man. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming, and we're gonna be out of here in 3, 2, 1. Remember, share, share, share.